So a viewer reached out to me asking if he could interview me for some research he's doing. Okay, that's awesome. It's probably like a college paper or something, I'm guessing. And it's a deep dive into how the guild works. So yesterday we watched like a Max, what was it? Like he sat down and just talked about his history and his backstory and stuff like that. And now we're getting into the details of how Liquid works. So let's sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, so it's how Team Liquid's unique culture helped us create an environment where players feel safe to speak up, whether positively or negatively. And honestly, this was cool and figured I'd give it some insight on how we've created our guild culture. Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hope you enjoy.
Oh, he's on camera. Holy.
We learned a lot about company cultures in my business degree, where you kind of want to find a company to work for where the culture makes sense for you, where you actually fit in and you feel like you're a part of that place versus just feeling like a complete odd man out, and it can make all the difference. This is like a really interesting topic.
Shit. All right, can I put you on stream?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
All right, fuck yeah. What's up, man?
Hi, nice to meet you.
All right, so your name is Mikkel, right?
It is indeed. Am I coming through clearly? Is all good?
Yeah, you are. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what you want, or like what do you want to talk to me about, and like what do you do right now?
What do you want?
What's going on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So my name's Mikkel. I work in the software industry in Denmark, and I do a bunch of research on the side about teams, team culture, team performance, and particularly how team culture affects performance. So I've been talking to a lot of different.
That stash, bro. My wife has been telling me to shave the goatee and what's it called, this part, and you just leave the stash. Like grow out the stash, shave the rest. What do we think? I don't know. Could happen. Could happen.
Software teams in the Copenhagen region about how their ability to talk about mistakes and be vulnerable and maybe sway a bit away from very traditional techie obsessive people's behavior around these things affects what cool stuff they do.
Okay.
And I've been playing WoW for many years and been following your stream a lot. And I think a while back you were talking about, you made a video series with some of the guys from some of the EU guilds, and you were talking a bit about differences of culture between how you sort of handled things. And you made some particular comments that I was super interested in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, and you're not a hidden echo spy, right? You're not going to go right back to them with this information.
Oh, of course. I am DMing all of this to Gingy live as we speak.
Okay, shit.
Of course.
All right. So that's really cool. All right, what do you want to know?
Awesome. First of all, do you mind if I record this as well? I guess yours is being recorded.
It's literally being recorded. You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, so as I mentioned, like I'm talking a lot about this. It's a culture of psychological safety is what some people call it. It's a very fancy word for saying how one is open to challenge the way things are, voice their concerns, opinions, and talk about mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the very short of it all. But
yeah,
I remember you talked about at one point that something that you do quite a lot in Liquid, even during the race to world first, is like just shoot the shit a lot, even like during polls, even on hard bosses. And you also mentioned specifically, I think you mentioned this thing that sometimes when you get new recruits in, there'll be like a mechanic where someone has to soak a circle. And let's say that this new recruit is like literally standing 1 foot away from the circle, but one of your raid members was actually able to soak it and they failed. They will immediately go, "That's on me. I could have handled that."
Correct. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, like, where did that come from? And do you think,
dude, I love playing with players who call out their own mistakes. They're good players. They make a mistake. Instantly, okay, my bad. I messed up. Let's go again. It's like, there's no pressure then. They know they messed up. You know they messed up. Mistakes happen. They called out their own mistake. Where it gets really awkward is when someone makes a mistake and doesn't want to admit it. I don't like playing with players like that. Like, for me, I'm just like, dude, like, mistake, like, if you're not going to admit you made a mistake, like, ever, and we all know players like that, then, like, I'll play with someone who's just like, well, would make even more mistakes, but at least would admit when they messed up. Because, like, dude, there's no way. There's no way.
Think that is part of what makes you so good, or like is that something you think consciously about? Is it just how you are, or what do you think?
Well, okay, so I think that's like it's a process of extreme ownership. It's like everything you could have done something better, even if it's 1% the new person's fault, or sorry, 99% the new person's fault and 1% yours. Being that person to come up ahead of it and say that you could have done something will leave an impression on them. This actually isn't something I think you would need to implement in a team that already has a really good working atmosphere. This was something we had to do because when we were in an original guild, we were made from like 5 different guilds with 5 different leadership types and morale and atmospheres, and like we were having some issues with people being really defensive with mistakes. So something we did as officers were like, okay, we're the people in the guild, we're respected. For this next tier, I want all of you, myself included, like if you could have done anything better, instantly set an example, instantly admit mistakes, try to help others. If someone else messed up, the reality is if you have a good player, they know they messed up. Even if they have a little ego thing, or even if they've been in a guild, we actually had a few players that were parts of guilds where like they had a tyrannical leader, and like when you made a mistake, they were literally conditioned to like defend themselves to the death, or else someone was going to like come after them. right. So like it's, if you've raided in an atmosphere like that for 4 or 5 years, this even can happen with new players. It's really hard to break out of that mechanism that exists in your brain where you make a mistake and you instantly feel like you have to defend yourself because you were just in an atmosphere where people attacked you for doing that, right? So a way for us to break people out of that is if you come into a guild, you're good, you know what you're doing. You wouldn't be good if you're good if you're here, right? And if you see, you know when you're making a mistake if you're good. If you make a mistake, and even people you know.
One of the subtle things that I've found helpful in this situation, in super high rated stuff even, is using the word we instead of you. So say you lose a game, you mess up a key in Mythic Plus, or you know, whatever it is, you wipe in a raid, and you say you messed up the soak. You, like, it's a blame game, right? You missed your kick. You left a gap in your CC chains. That's maybe true, but it makes the other person feel on the defensive instantly. Instead of we missed the soak, we missed the kick, we left a gap in the CC chain. You see the difference? It takes responsibility as a team. It's not putting one person down, it's putting our whole team down. We, as a team, we missed the kick, which, you know, could fall into one person, but that's not the point. It's just the language, right? It's a team game. We did it, right? We won, we lost. We missed the kick, we missed the soak. So when you start using we instead of you and blaming someone, the conversation instantly feels way lighter. So it's just a good, like, verbal hack, so to speak.
Know that are good, that make a mistake and are deflecting blame, deep down they know they did it. If you start doing that and you see someone else that, I think the example you used, and I'll explain it again for chat, is this, it's actually kind of a really old fight. Maybe I can think of a new analogy, but on like Kill Jaden, when you had to soak one of the little small circles and you're assigned spots of the room to soak them. Let's say there's a new player and he was right next to it and he didn't move. He like either didn't notice or whatever, but then there's someone else who was 5 yards away. That player, as soon as the wipe is over, know they messed up. But what you might hear the veteran player who is 5 yards away, they might be like, oh guys, that was on me, I could have soaked that. And it is true they could have soaked that. It's also true that that other person probably should have. But that player will see the ownership from the more experienced player and be like, oh shit. They might not say anything about it. They'll never talk about it, those two people, but it will leave a lasting impression on that person that it is okay to admit mistakes, immediately move on. And an atmosphere like that is really the only way at this level we can compete. If you spent 5 minutes assigning blame after all of these pulls, I mean, you'd be horrible, right? Like you have to quickly identify mistakes, problem solve, move on, go, right? So you have to be in that kind of mindset, and that's something we did a long time ago. I will mention though, we don't really have to do that anymore. That was something we did when we had a lot of people with that, like I would almost say syndrome or condition, where they felt the need to defend themselves. That isn't a thing now. I mean, if you're in this guild, you know, if you're in this guild, people know that you're good enough to be here. You don't feel insecure about that. And we have never had an issue in years. And maybe it's because we acted like that for so long, but we haven't had an issue in years where someone would unironically mess up and be like, afraid to say it. So I would say this helped develop our culture, but it is unnecessary.
It's a confidence thing for sure. If you're not confident in your gameplay, you're not going to have the confidence to just be like, I messed up. That one's on me. If you're a good player and you're confident, you know that everyone messes up. That's part of it. And good players mess up all the time. Trust me. You do a pull, you mess up, and you're like, oh crap, that was on me. I forgot the soak. Let's go again. You know, it's just not a big deal. But if you're kind of a noob, it's hard to say that. You know, it's harder to own it, right?
To do now.
And do you, like, I'm just curious, like, how did that appear? Because what you're talking about there sounds a bit like leading by example, essentially, which is a really powerful mechanism in a lot of these things. And I just wonder, at least in let's say in programming, that's where I typically work.
Yeah.
You tend to see these profiles, not so much anymore, but you used to, like what people call the rock star developer, right? The guy who sits in his corner with his sandals and socks on and some convention hoodie, and he's super good, is what everyone says. So you don't bother John because he's super good. He's a bit of an asshole, but he's super good. Did you ever get those types of players? Because I at least know from my playing experience, I've definitely played with those kinds of guys. Or do they never make it to that level?
That's a great question.
Hey,
so,
Jinx.
man, I'm trying to think. I mean, you definitely have people that like are really good and know they're good. There is a small difference, but there is a definite difference between confidence and arrogance, right?
Yeah.
Someone who knows they're very good at something, and someone who's smart and is good at something is going to know that they're good at it, and it's exuding confidence rather than exuding I'm just better than you, right?
Right.
I would say oftentimes people like that don't make it to this level. So like, here's an example of a player, someone who's really, really talented, naturally really talented. And, you know, they have all the really, really high level intuition that makes you really, really good at this. You're really smart. Your ability to solve problems on your own personal level is really fast. But you have this small problem where every time you make a mistake, you have a habit of it being someone else's fault. If you're a league player, it's the jungle didn't gank when he was supposed to. If you're like someone like it's always something else could have done something better. Those people often make it like 80 to 90% of the top. They might be in a top whatever world guild, but as far as making it to the very, very top with how selective our guild and Echo has been for so long, those people don't usually quite make it to that level because they're literally prohibiting themselves from getting better. Like, you admitting to yourself that you messed up is a growth tool, right? Like, I messed up, how can I fix that? If you genuinely think, oh, you did everything right and this person could have done something better, you usually, even if you're very talented, just because of a bad mindset, you will end up capping out at a lot lower level than you're capable of, right?
Yeah, that's a fair
So that's
answer.
pretty common.
Yeah.
As far as still having people like that, because you see this in sports too. You see people who are absolute superstars in sports and they make it to the highest levels and they're still just me, super selfish and stuff like that. I would say that in other sports, you have the ability as an individual to have a much bigger impact than you do in WoW. In WoW, you have a 20-man raid. You can have an absolute all-star in your raid, but that's not going to really affect your guild in the same way that like
Cohesion.
a really good striker would be in football, or a basketball. In basketball, like, stars are everything. Like, a star dominates your ability to perform in the game. I think I don't know in WoW with 20 people if you can have that impact, and I think oftentimes in a large group environment of 20 people working together really closely, an attitude like that is so detrimental that their skill difference, if possible, wouldn't be worth the problems with working with them. So that being said, I don't think I've actually personally dealt with a lot of those players. I think they get weeded out before they get to this level. But I think even if that person made it here, they would be really hard. Like, for example, if I'm fired up, like someone in our guild who a lot of people are aware is very good, a mage player, if he was like really hard to work with and people like really didn't like admitting things, people thought he was kind of an asshole, he just wouldn't last in this guild. Like, if people don't want to be around someone in this guild, we would get rid of them. I think that doesn't really happen, but that would be how we dealt with it. I think that's.
I've said this in the past. If you have the choice, and I'm talking like you guys, you have the choice between a really, really, really good player with a terrible attitude who's kind of a rager, or someone who's, let's just be honest, a bit more of a noob, but a great attitude, and you guys can actually work together, grind together, build synergies, and start actually grinding, you know, whether it's M+ or Arena or rating or whatever it is. Like, you pick the person with a good attitude that's willing to stick through the losses and actually grind with you and build synergies, right? If you pick that person that's really, really, really good, but it's going to rage on you, yeah, you might do well or better in those first 5 or 10, 15 games. But after that, like, you're not going to go anywhere ever. So you're picking a road that has a dead end, right? So I mean, I've done this in the past. There's been players that are really good, but the attitude sucks. So it's just like, okay, we'll just play with someone else. And like, well, you just pick someone who's like a noob. Okay, so take like Peekaboo, for example. He has a great attitude, right? Whether we win or we lose, we're having fun. Is he that skilled? You know, but like the attitude, like I said, the attitude is really what matters here. All right.
That's how most competitive teams should deal with that.
Yeah, I think that I would tend to agree, and I think I find it a bit fascinating because is that sort of part of the process of how you recruit? Do you select for this, or does it sort of just happen organically?
Never. I mean, we don't even do interviews. So in WoW, it's really unfortunate as opposed to sports, and maybe with people working with. Actually, you said you work software engineer, programming, stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay, so, how well do you think you'd be able to tell that someone was good at their job if they did a code test or some kind of thing where they just had to do some fresh out of school thing to like show your code? As far as I can tell from talking to a few software engineers, they can tell you people who are the absolute best coders that would need 8 people to do their job that would not do well on a code test going into a new job, right?
For sure.
So you know people are the shit because you work with them and you see what they're able to do with the tasks that are given to them, and there's really no way to test for that. WoW is the exact same way. So like there's no metric that could tell you if someone was good enough to do this. Logs are a complete joke. So you have to play with them, right? So like I would say it's more that. Like you just have to play with people to figure out if they're.
That's why my logs are low. That's why my logs are low. You guys heard it from Max himself. Logs are a complete joke. They don't matter. That's the reason I have lower logs. That's it. Like that's literally it. If I cared about logs and these logs mattered, they would all be hundreds. But I'm a team player. I'm not trying to log because they don't care. Just like Max just said, guys, listen to Max. They don't matter.
They're good.
Yeah, I used to be the healing officer for my Mythic Raid team and had to recruit people based on logs, and I can tell
healers
you
are the
healing
worst.
Logs,
yeah,
I'm sure
healing
you know.
logs, lol.
But I mean, I think for from a programming perspective, you know, like typically, I guess you said there is no interview part. I remember we did recruiting for my guild. We were doing like these surveys and people had to fill this stuff out. And I think we tried to select for this a little bit because you said like no amount of skill is worth an asshole. But do you have anything like that? Like even if it isn't an interview? Or?
Like, I mean, here's how we would find someone. So typically when we would recruit someone, it would be someone in our guild playing with someone at some point, either in some other guild or in Mythic Plus, and they'd be like, I think this guy's great. And then the next thing we would do is we would like log on some random level 1s on this person's server and just be like, we would just ask someone in their guild unprompted, who's the best player in your guild? A lot of the times they won't answer because you're just some random level 1, but every now and then you'll get a list of answers, and we would just need enough people to just definitively say that person.
Wow, that's
right?
interesting.
Like, I think that's
a
the
cool
best,
tactic.
Interesting.
That's the best way to find out if someone's good enough to play here is like, you know, if people who play with you are like, yo, this guy's the shit. No logs or anything. If it's a good enough guild
That's
or
really
going to equal like someone doing stuff like that. I think people have started to figure out that we do that. But that's like the best thing you can do because this also weeds out other things. If that person's a total fucking douchebag, how likely are random people unprompted going to answer the question of who's the best person in your guild? Not referencing logs, not referencing any kind of statistics. Are you going to say the name of the person who might be really good but everyone dislikes? Probably not. So like having someone vouch for you unprompted to someone kind of is telling you a little bit about their personality as well, because they
really
are
fascinating.
somewhat agreeable or likable. Yeah. No, sorry, you're fine. And so that's kind of why we do that, because like interviews in WoW are fake, and maybe this is true everywhere, and people still do them that are much smarter than we are. So maybe we're wrong for doing this, but I just feel like in an interview, anyone's just going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. It's kind of like a vibe check more than anything else. But someone who's not a complete idiot is just going to pass the vibe check. You just say super agreeable things that are irrelevant. And it just seems like a waste of everyone's time. So I'd rather just get them in the guild, see how they vibe in a raid, because as soon as someone new in this guild joins a raid, you're just going to have half of our players just like talking to them throughout the entire raid, and you'll get an instant vibe from this person. And I think that matters more than anything else. And then it's just about their ability to play the game, which you see over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually, privately in the company I work at now, we've begun instigating hiring processes where we try to get people to like work for an hour or half a day if they want to, just swing by for that exact reason.
Yeah,
I think that's interesting. I had one more question actually, so maybe just circle back a bit to that culture if you don't mind, and also feel free to kick me off at any point.
No,
right?
You're good. Yeah.
Awesome. So one thing you mentioned originally in this video clip that I'm talking about is like you talked about how this was quite different with you guys compared to I can't remember which EU guild it was at the time. Maybe it was Echo. Where you said like, you know, they're all serious and you have this very jovial tone. You also talk about Echo, mistakes and stuff.
Yeah. And I wonder. Definitely Echo. After they're all serious, definitely Echo. Yeah. Oh my god.
Like is that difference intentional or organic, and B, do you think it affects performance? Like, is that why?
Before Max answers, I just want to butt in here. There are cultural differences. You see this very clearly in the American the American or like NA WoW PvP scene and the European WoW PvP scene. Europeans, when it comes to competition, from what I can tell, at least in WoW gaming culture, just take things more seriously, which is awesome, by the way. I'm not saying that in a negative light at all. It's really cool. I'm referencing a player like Waz, Raikou, Meh. Actually, funny enough, they're on Echo too, which, you know, makes sense. They take it serious. They take it serious. Like, they are trying to win. They care. Right? It's like the profession to them. Like, they want to put every ounce in. And to be honest, that's pretty cool. The NA scene, at least for a long time, and I'm not talking every team here, but I'm saying that the NA scene for many, many years, it would be BlizzCon time or regionals time, and they'd get flown out to, you know, whether it was Columbus or whether it was LA, you know, wherever. And they all get drunk the night before, stay up till like 2, 3, 4 a.m. the night before a tournament, slamming beverages, slamming them. They wake up completely hungover, and then they go into their matches. Win or lose, they're just kind of like, all right, cool, man, that was a fun little vacation, and then they go back and do their thing. They just don't take it the same way as the Europeans. I'm not really like... Yeah, you know, you do what you want to do. But, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, there is a really, really cool approach to, like, taking something very seriously and having pride in that thing and just being like, this is what we're going for, man. Like, that's cool, too. It's very different, though. And I started the video where you talk about, like, company cultures and finding the right fit for you. You got to be honest. You're like, okay, am I the type of person that wants other people taking this seriously? And if they're not taking it seriously, I'm going to get a little upset. Because to be honest, maybe that's kind of a bit more how I am. I'm pretty serious when I like actually want to compete in something. Or are you the type of person that wants a really laid back, chill environment where everyone's just kind of chilling? But, you know, there's pros and cons to each, right? So you have to be honest with yourself.
You've been able to beat them sometimes, maybe? I mean, that's maybe a bit of a stretch.
Well... Yeah, as far as like winning or losing, I also can't fully speak to how Echo runs. Like, they mute their comms a lot of the times, so I can't fully speak to their atmosphere. Like, I know people who have raided there. I have multiple friends that have raided here and there, and you hear things. But I think it's pretty clear from a viewer that there's like a difference in like the level of levity, I think, in the raid. As far as that being good or bad, I don't know if that's something that we force. I think that's more just us being ourselves. I've also noticed this in a lot of English-speaking European guilds that, and maybe this is kind of me guessing here, but I know in America, when you're raiding with mostly people, we do have some European players who play here, but like our initial guild culture was established before that. When you listen, the average English-speaking EU guild, they're much more direct, and it's because English isn't a lot of their first languages. So in a way, like when you're bringing things up, it's just kind of straight to the point and there's less like beating around the bush. That could be a cultural difference. It could be a language, second language thing. But I've noticed that EU guilds in general are just more direct. And a lot of times that can be perceived by people who are not used to that culture as being toxic. But that's just because I think in a lot of ways, American guilds, NA guilds are actually kind of the opposite of that. It's like, you're not going to address something. I actually kind of prefer the EU way, to be honest with you. We do that.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you travel to Europe or you go from Europe to America, you're going to notice the difference. Like, Europeans are definitely more direct with their language. Maybe it's because, you know, English isn't their first language, but they're definitely more direct. It's very noticeable, right? In America, we're kind of dancing around it. It's just like, say the damn thing. And in Europe, it's probably annoying with Americans just not like saying what they mean. And in Europe, it's probably more just like, just spit it out, bro. Like, we're not going to take offense to anything. Just say it. Like, I've certainly noticed that, right?
We do the EU way of like, you address things instantly. You can't, like, if you're just the person that's never going to talk about something, people are going to talk about it after raid. If it's not addressed in public, people are going to address it themselves. That's how that works. So you kind of need to do it right away, but there's a way to do that with respect. I'm sure Echo probably does that. I actually can't speak too much to them. I actually think both of our guilds have had really good success, and I think it's fascinating that we operate clearly totally differently, but I don't think that that's too unlike most major sports. I'm aware of some guilds that or not guilds, but like some teams that are like, you know, the guys don't really like each other, but they're really good and they make it work. And there are some teams that are like super tight, and you could see people make the argument that like us being so tight knit as a group makes us better, and then others that are like kind of at odds, there's multiple cliques that are kind of going against each other, whatever, like, but they can still succeed. So I would say this would be an excellent question, I think, to bounce off. Maybe there's a few people. So Tobo, Wolf Disco, now I'm trying to think of people who have raided in both guilds would probably be a really good person to ask about this, like as a one-off, because I'm sure they'd be able to tell you like the differences and maybe how that benefits or doesn't benefit. Because most of it for me is not easy because I'm kind of guessing as to the effects that has on them, or even what their atmosphere is truly like. I don't like we are much more open. Like if you watch us in progression, when we are streaming Mythic Progression, we have our comms unmuted 100% of the time. Their comms are muted almost all the time, so you are able to hear how we interact. You don't really get to see how they interact in like a high pressure situation most of the time. So it's really,
what I find interesting is that both guilds have found an incredible level of success, and they go about it in two completely different ways. That's fascinating, right? It goes to show it, there's not just one way, like one, all right, this is the way to do it, let's all do it this way. It's like, no, like you're the type of person that wants to do it like this, then we can find a community of people that are doing it like this, and you can still find success that way. Now, there are probably things that are just bad too, which is fine. But, you know, it is interesting to consider.
really hard for me to answer that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and thank you for those ideas. I think that's an interesting approach, and I think I wonder. So on your side of things, you talk about like, you know, this culture enables you to have the hard talks essentially, right? And I think that's one of the key reasons why it might help you. It's not about being PC or cozy or nice. It's that you can actually talk about the more difficult things. And I just wonder, like, is that something you train between races? Like, is there something where do you have conversations with the players about this? Is it mostly like a leadership kind of thing, or do people just live with it, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, you have to have those hard conversations to succeed at this level. Like, if after a pull is over and I know I need to address something with a player and it has to do with something they're doing and I want to change it, either they were doing something intentionally wrong, bad, or whatever, I have to have the conversation with them of trying to change it. That can be done adversarially, or it can be done with respect, and both kind of accomplish the same thing. Again, as far as like group morale and atmosphere, like that can have some effects on that. But like, I think what you just do is you just have a long-standing rapport with people. They know that, like, if I make a mistake or if one of our officers makes a mistake, they're never going to hide from it, right? Or if we need to change something we're doing, we're going to be open with that. So hopefully our players see that, and then when we have to tell them something that, you know, it could be hard. You could be on your 5th 16-hour raid day in a row. You're having a bad day. That can happen. You didn't eat a lot. You didn't get a lot of sleep. And you're just in a bad mood, and then you messed up. And you know what you really don't want to hear when you already know you messed up is like someone bringing it up in front of 100,000 people. right? Live on stream.
Literally.
That can just do shit to your brain, right? Like, it's not easy to do that. I think the only way you can really condition yourself for that is to just have respect for people, know they're not going to bring it up. Like, I would hope that none of my raiders, if I bring up something to them, if Zasevi, if Scott brings something up to them, that they're not going to respond. They know that we're not bringing it up on a personal level. It is only to succeed as a group. And I think that just can only really come from a long time of playing with these people and a level of respect. Because you can tell someone, you know, basically you fucked up and need to change it, but obviously give them something to change. Pointing that out and without any like solution doesn't really do anything. But like, you can do that with respect and then just immediately move on. It's probably a lot harder to do that if you like are aggressive, I guess. So it's not really about how you say it either. It can be really direct. There has to be a level, you have to respect them and they have to know that you respect them. And if that is
one of the ways that I've found particularly helpful for this exact instance is when someone like messes up. Well, one, you know, they'll probably call it out first and stuff like that. But you know, if it needs to be addressed, if you need to call out someone on their mistake, also call them out when they do well. I found this highly effective. Wow, really nice play there, right? Because it shows that, yo, I respect you. You're a good player. That was dope. Sick life grip, you know? Super good positioning, right? Great death, right? Like, great hold there. Boom, just little things like that. Then, if there is one mistake that needs to be pointed out, right? A lot of the times the players will point it out themselves, like we already talked about, but then it's like, I think you didn't need to Guardian Spirit there. We probably could have held. What do you think? Yeah, that probably was the case. All right, let's send up another game. It's way different when you actually compliment someone. It's like Blizzard as a company. What I try to do is I call them out on their L's because they have a lot of them. But I also try to call them out when they have W's. It's like, great work, Blizzard. Okay, Blizzard, you messed up. But if you're only calling the L's, that's not really fair. And if you're only calling the W's, well, then you're just glazing them. It's like, come on, well, there are things that are you know, they can improve here, right? But when you call them both, I feel like there's some level of balance.
True, I think you can kind of say whatever you want to anyone as long as it's being productive. Yeah.
I think that makes a ton of sense, and I think it sounds like to me that this baseline cultural agreement, or whatever you want to call it, kind of allows you to do a lot of things that would be challenging without it, and more than actively engaging with it is like the enabler and the catalyst for all of the other things that you can just kind of do.
Yeah, I think so, but I mean, let's just throw it the other way. Again, I can't really speak to Echo's culture, but let's just say it's a lot less like respectful, I guess, when you're saying it to people. It might be more like, you know, I'm sure there's a level of respect. Like, I really am just kind of guessing here to answer part of your question. Where it's like, sometimes you can do the same thing, saying something to someone to fix something with respect, and then also saying it when you're clearly really mad and people are like sighing and really mad about it. That's the same thing. Like, you're kind of accomplishing the same thing. Maybe that person's morale is a little higher or lower for the 20 minutes after that, or maybe you're so used to that atmosphere that it just doesn't faze you. Like, you're just built like a brick, you know, you're just like, you have a crazy mental. I don't really know the benefits. Psychologically, it's really interesting, I think, how that happens to people. I just know for us, it's not really a forced, I would say it's much less about a forced way to do things. We don't intentionally do that with respect or be nice or whatever. It's just kind of who we are, who I am, who groups of people are in the guild that naturally just work with each other. But if I think if like, it's possible that if you listen to a lot of other teams from different cultures, that could sound different, but you could still solve the same problem with the same efficiency. And as long as people are used to that and know what to expect, like here's an example. If you were to put one of our players who've raided here for a long time and put them into Echo's environment, they might fucking hate it. It might be the exact same thing, but they just don't like it. You could do the exact same thing the other way. You could throw like Gingy in our guild and like we're joking around during a poll and he'll want to fucking die. Like he would want nothing to do with that. Like he would think that we're like fucking throwing or like we're like, it's just like you get used to a certain atmosphere and that atmosphere works for you and for your team, and that's just how it works. But it's possible that it wouldn't work. Maybe someone would prefer one rather than the other, right? I definitely think that's true.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think from my own raid experiences, I've definitely been on both sides of that spectrum. So of course, on a much less intense level.
Yeah.
But I think I also wonder, like, how do you know that that works for your players, right? Because to give you an example of what you spoke about before, like, we know that fear is a pretty good motivator, or shame or being called out in the short term, right? Like, if someone makes you feel really shit, like let's say on a live stream in front of 100,000 people, your most pressing motivation is going to be to not do that. But often it means you're optimizing for the wrong thing, right? You're trying to not make mistakes rather than to win, let's say. And
yeah.
I wonder, like, any comments? Yeah.
Well, I mean, fear can be a big motivator. I would say that's something we never do. I actually like completely disagree with that. I think if you're playing, whether it's in front of the 20 people in your raid or 100,000 people, solving a problem and having the person understand it and treating them with respect is just, in my opinion, personally, always going to get a better response than someone who you give the exact same information to. You're solving the same problem, but instead you ridiculed them and made them feel embarrassed in front of 100,000 people. The whole like performing out of fear, I am of the opinion that absolutely no one plays better in WoW in a bad mood ever.
I agree with that. Yeah,
right.
I agree with
I
that.
agree.
For
I think
sure.
What I meant to say is that, like, that might work for some people in the short term, in that they won't make that mistake, but usually it has lasting damages, and it's not a good way to go about
exactly.
that, for sure.
That's how I feel. But if someone disagreed with that and they were like, no, actually, like, because like there's like the military, for example, is very direct, very aggressive leadership, and that works for them. Like maybe it works for different people in different scenarios, and maybe different people need different levels of leadership. They need that really hard cut stuff. I just don't think that would really work for us at all. And I've seen it before. I've seen players like make a mistake, be down on themselves, and then get that extra motivation of like, hey man, just letting you know you fucked up. And then when you add the like, you never know how people will react. And then if you add the whole like 40,000 people are now typing in chat that you fucking suck or whatever, all these random people that don't even play this game are telling this insane player that they're bad, right? That can affect anyone, man. And I just,
dude, especially if you're not used to it. Well, I mean, it can affect anyone, but it really affects people that aren't used to it. If you're not used to being on a broadcast and having thousands of people pinpoint every little mistake that you make, it's gonna be a shocker if you're not used to that, right? Like any little thing, people are waiting for you to trip up and they want to call you out because they're miserable. And it's like, damn. Right? Damn, that's some perspective for a second, right? And now if you do it all day, every day, like someone like Max or someone like me, it's like, okay, yeah, I mess up one, I stand in the fire, Twitch chat is going to roast me. Huh, get it? The fire and the roasting? I mess up anything, I'm going to get roasted. But like, I just know that's going to be the case, so it's, it is what it is. You just make a joke out of it and move on, because that's, what else are you going to do? But if you're new to that environment, and then you get put onto a show, and there's just a ton of people, whew.
Cannot possibly believe that person would play better in the next 15 minutes than if they still solved the same problem but felt respected and weren't getting shit on by tens of thousands of people, right? That's how I feel.
Oh, for sure. I think that makes a ton of sense. Is this so this whole cultural sort of thing you've got going? It sounds like you have a pretty crystallized idea of what it is. Is that something you talk to the players about frequently as well?
No. I mean, I think maybe every now and then before a race, it can be important to emphasize, like, hey guys, I might have to come at you guys later this week, and you may not be in the best of moods, but just know that it is never personal or whatever. Like, maybe you'll say something like that, but a lot of that is obvious. They've been here. We have a lot of the same players. I would definitely, if we had a bunch of new players, it would be very important to let them know about that. It's also one of the things that why Race to World First experience is so important, because like you need to kind of know what it's like to be in that atmosphere. Like any human being would play so much better in their second or third race than their first, no matter how good you are.
I feel like it's astronauts training to go to space or something. It's like Race to World First is such an endurance sport, if you want to call it a sport. It's like you think you're a good player. 16 hours a day, 10 days in, lack of sleep, your brain is just dead. You wake up, your head is pounding, your eyes hurt, your whole body hurts. You turn on the stream and there's some random banter about how you suck or something, and then you make a mistake. Whew, that's different. That's totally different, man. Yeah, like that's past being a good player, right?
Because
Totally
it's just so
different.
unique and there's no way to prepare for this, and part of that is definitely the mental required, as well as getting enough sleep and eating and making sure that you're like somehow healthy after that amount of time. Yeah.
Not living off of candy if they don't serve pizza.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. Shout out THD. Yeah, but he's weird. Like he's never like played bad ever, and he eats candy for meals. So who knows?
I also wasn't intentionally to randomly flame him. I just remember that story.
Oh no, you can flame him. Flaming him is warranted. Yeah.
Oh man. So maybe if I can ask one more question, and then I'll let you go as well, because I don't want to waste your time.
No, you're good.
When you sort of so you talk about like this works really well for everyone who's played together for a long ass time. Do you I suppose like how big is your drop off actually between races in terms of new players?
In between raids, the amount of people that quit is almost no one. In between every raid, however, we do usually demote like 3 or 4 players. It depends. I think this tier was less than that. I think it was maybe 2 or 1. And you bring on new people.
I didn't realize the turnover was that high. Every raid, so there's 20 players. He said they demote 3 or 4 players every tier. I didn't. That's news to me. I thought it was like the same 20 that's been gaming together for years, and then maybe someone has to quit, or you have to do a replacement, and you'll get someone like one player new every now and then. I didn't know the turnover. Wow.
This is done for a few reasons. People can obviously lose their passion over time. People can get passed up skill-wise, and sometimes people are fine, but they don't serve a certain purpose on your roster because of like the way class balance is in a certain game. You don't need eight. You might need 3 mages, but you don't need 3 hunters or something. Like you could have a lot of people alt a hunter, and mage is like more specialized. So it kind of depends on the person.
Yeah, you can just alt a hunter. Yeah, that's fine. Hunters, yeah, you just hunters you can just alt. Mages though, specialized. That's from Max. That's from Max, guys. That's not from me. Max said it. Okay, mages takes a little bit of specialization. Hunters, pff, let's throw it as an alt. That's fine. Let's throw an alt hunter in there. Let's keep watching.
But every now and then someone will quit because they're just kind of burnt out. That actually happened this time. We had one person do that. It's very rare. I would say more often it's demoting people, and it's to bring in new people that either serve a purpose for a specific class you need, or you're just trying to, if you keep the same people for 6 years, you're lacking growth, right? You need to kind of not even trim the fat. Like, honestly, it sucks. Like, I've had to demote people from this guild that are fucking incredible players. They're really good, but like they were sitting for multiple tiers. They weren't really getting any raid time, and there's like this new up and coming player. Like, we recruited a player this tier. He was a tank for vodka last year, and the way we recruited him, going back to how you asked how we recruited earlier, is we actually had multiple people from this guild, including officers, unprompted, reach out to us and be like, you got to recruit this guy. Like,
Wait, is that Yips? Who is the tank from vodka? Is that Yips? I don't know.
This guy's fucking nuts. He was like a 5-time Brawlhalla world champion, randomly started playing WoW. He's just like a super zoomer. He's like 19 or something.
So this is not Yips.
And he's just like fucking cracked at the game, right? So like we didn't even need a tank, but we just recruited this guy. And you just find a way to make it work because you need that to happen. Like those are the players that like can, I don't know how many players we currently have in the guild, but you can only bring 20 at a time, and the number closer to 20 or above 20 that you can get that are like truly unbelievable players, the better you're going to be, right? Player skill really matters. It's really hard to find people who are like that guy. So by removing a few players that you've seen for a while, you know what they are, they're reliable, but you need to kind of continue improving your roster. One way to do that is to keep trying the field out and seeing the new up and coming players and seeing where they stack up. And I think that's a way to improve over time. Every guild basically does this. You kind of have to do this. Sometimes it happens naturally, but sometimes you have to force it as well.
That's
so
the
on the note,
toughest part
like in the software industry, like a lot of growth happens because of scaling, right? Like you don't have to cap at 20. You can keep hiring, and a lot of people also grow from switching different companies. And so I wonder a bit, like if we view the sort of the career path of a professional WoW player, and you're the end game, right? Like there's not really anywhere to move on past you, and there's only 20 Like, is that so? When you talk about demotion between seasons and stuff, like, is that something that sort of hangs over the head of people, or is it just part of the job, or how does that sort of make people feel?
I mean, it's got to make them feel bad. Like, I mean, like it's been some of the worst, and I don't mean to imply that what I'm going through is worse than what they're going through, but demoting people from this guild is like some of the worst experiences I've ever had in my life.
Has to be.
And I know it's worse for them, but like you're basically kicking someone that sometimes didn't even really do anything wrong, just someone else was better, or one of those reasons, and you basically have to fire someone from their job and their like main hobby and passion. They may not want to raid anywhere else that isn't here. It's hard to raid. Generally, people who leave here and raid in other guilds just hate it and quit, right? So like I know I'm basically kicking them from their hobby and their job at the same time, which is like fucking brutal, and I hate that. But yeah, there is only 20 spots. How people usually deal with that is there's other guilds you can raid in. There's like typically who we're recruiting, who Echo has been recruiting for the last 2 or 3 years, is we're recruiting the best player in one of the guilds closely behind us, right? So if you want the race to world first career path is...
Bro, how does that feel if you're in vodka? Vodka is like, you know, another prominent NA guild, and you have a really good player and then it gets poached by Liquid. And you have another really good player, and then you get poached by Liquid. It's like, Vodka's probably like, damn it, bro, we're never going anywhere, man. Like, dude. And then, I mean, but if you're Liquid, you got to do it, right? Like, you have to see the best players, and you have to be like, all right, like, we need the best players if we want to continue to be on top, right? Yeah. And yeah, and BDG is another good example, you know?
Is usually just being the best player in your guild, moving up guilds, and eventually will find that person. So I think that's generally how that goes. Yeah.
Gotcha. Just out of curiosity, so you talk about this this demotion processes and all this. You talked about like how it feels and the thoughts going around, and I was wondering like what sort of background do you draw upon in that situation? I know you also did something in the software industry. I know you also sang in a choir.
Oh, yeah, no, I did. I basically, like, right before I started doing the Race World First, or right before I started streaming, I was playing WoW the whole time, but I went to, like, tech school. I didn't do any software engineering. I was, like, a networking guy, so I set up networking for small and mid-sized businesses. I wasn't very good at my job. I got hired out of my first semester in school and didn't even finish it, and I was, like, super trash, and that was like just the last thing I did before this. I would definitely not call myself a super tech person. I like the most intricate thing I did was with one other person. I set up like a network environment with a server for like a business of like 30 people in their office. Like that was it.
Right.
Some baby.
So do you mean you just learned this on the job, or like where does that come from?
Learn what on the job? Learn all of the leadership stuff?
How to manage your organization?
Great question,
many people and go through these things.
So I think what gave me most of my managerial like experience was like right out of college, my brother was running a restaurant. And he just needed a supervisor. He didn't have a lot of people he could trust, so I just moved up, started working there, got promoted to supervisor after a while, and then I ended up like running the restaurant mostly. And I like had to make a lot of those decisions and like how to treat people differently based, or like how to work with everyone in that scenario was hard. You had some people that were college students, you had high school students, you had people who were in their 40s living paycheck to paycheck, like very different personalities of people. And I think I learned how to like respect people for who they were and deal with that there. That's what gave me some of that, but most of it was just learning on the job. Like I think running a WoW guild is very similar to like running your own business, actually, like a lot of the same principles. If I were to ever stop doing this and try to get hired somewhere, probably the most impressive thing I could put is what I've done with the guild, but I doubt anyone would look at that and not laugh at it. But
honestly, they shouldn't laugh, man. Like running the most, or you know, the most, or one of the most successful WoW guilds, like that's pretty badass. Like if people know what it is, that's awesome. But for the person that doesn't know, I guess they would laugh at it, you know, and be like, okay, bro, what? You ran a WoW guild? Like this is the real world. But like, bro, they should be impressed, right?
I do think that I learned almost all of it on the job. You do reading and watch videos on leadership, but a lot of it is just you just have to figure it out. I wasn't very good at it when I started, and I got better at it over time because I had to.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in that, and I mean, I'm here for that reason, right? I think, you know, I attend a lot of conferences where people talk about these experience journeys of how they sort of came to a lot of those conclusions about how leadership works that you can't really read in a book. And I think I've seen some of that in the way you talk about the guild and the culture. So at least in my estimation, there's definitely something there. I think you mentioned sort of the point of not directly, but like the diversity of the people that you've been working with in your past experience. And I imagine that in the guild, people coming from, I mean, I guess it's mostly America, but still, that's a big country in its own right. And I guess a lot of different walks of life and stuff.
Yeah.
Is that been challenging? Is it part of your success, or what do you think how that affects the guild and the culture?
No, I mean, we worked from we have, I think we have like a few, we had Finnish players, we've had Swedish players, we've had Danish players, we have people from the UK, we've never had any French, few Germans, but yeah,
Wait, does he mean people from the UK that moved to America, or people from the UK that just play on high ping? Because playing on high ping on NA realms and going for world first, I feel like would be kind of hard. They move for the race? No. Played in liquid? Both. A lot of them fly over. Because I feel like the ping thing is... Wait, actually, this is a good question for chat, that for people that have played a lot of PvE. Because in PvP, ping is very important. If you're playing on like over 100 ping... or over like 150, it's gonna be rough, like really, really rough. Like you can do it, but it's rough. In PvE, does it matter as much? Because it's not another player on the other side. It's a boss. Maybe it doesn't matter like as much. Anything over 60 is rough. It is in PvE too. It seems like it would be hard. Yeah. Okay.
We've had to mix in a lot of different cultures. I will tell you that isn't something I've ever really had to think about. You know? I think if you were to like throw yourself in a Finnish guild, throw yourself in a multicultural English-speaking EU guild, it may be a big acclamation or a big thing to acclimate to. But like this has always, people from other cultures have always fit right in, and I think a lot of and it's not me. A lot of the time it isn't me. Like I think our guild's culture is really built up by the average atmosphere of a lot of our players that have been here for a long time. You know, and as soon as someone new joins the guild, no matter where they're from or where they came before this, you're going to see Shaq and Fired Up and Atlas or whoever invite them to Monday Night Squad, which I believe will be happening tomorrow. And they're just going to talk to them for like, they're going to ask them questions every 2 minutes. Sometimes people will, react to that differently. But, they make them feel involved right away. And I think people usually end up just fitting in here. I've never had a situation ever where someone has come in and just like been a good player and hasn't fit in, like they kind of like everybody. So I wouldn't even say a lot of that is me. A lot of that is because in farm, a lot of the times people aren't doing the same thing. We play the game really hardcore for a couple weeks and then we kind of just do whatever. So like it's about playing other games with them and like playing beta and getting to know them. But we haven't had.
I kind of forget about that, right? Like when it comes to other esports. So when you think of like, let's take AWC for example. These players are playing the cups. There's Cup 1, Cup 2, Cup 3. And then there's like the regional event. So it's like the big event. Like after all the cups, you have a larger event. And then you go into like season 2 where you have Cup 1, Cup 2, Cup 3, then the larger event. And then like at the end of the year, it's like BlizzCon or like the super large event. So they're playing for like the majority of the year. And a lot of it is like every weekend, right? But they're not doing 16-hour days like these Race to World First guys. It's like a whole different event, right? When it's Race to World First, it's like 16-hour days, like day after day after day after day. It's like, geez. But then there's like 6 months of like, you can kind of just chill and do whatever. Obviously, that you probably still want to play the game, right? Or else you're going to get like super rusty. You don't want to probably just like quit and, just do whatever you want. But like but you have like 6 months of time to just kind of chill. And then it's like, all right, another tier's coming up. Let's buckle up. That's just a really interesting thing to consider.
Had too much of an issue with that. And I think it's because we are our own culture. And I would like to think that it's easy for people to acclimate to it, I guess. I don't know. It seems pretty accepting of whoever you would want, whoever you are. So we've never had any issues with that, I guess, in short, where people have come in and, yeah.
Do you tend to build a lot of that culture outside of the Race to World First in that case? Do people join you up before the race and then this mostly happens before that, or?
I think someone probably won't fully get this until they do their first race in the guild, because it is just really this thing that kind of binds us all together. But I don't think it happens it all happens organically. It doesn't happen by, it's like this new person doesn't join, hey, let's set up this thing where they all do it. It's just like, we're all gamers, we all play games all the time. Everyone who games at this level plays a bunch of other different games. You find someone else to queue in, like playing in-house with, queue some battle royale games with, play whatever. Our Discord is usually popping with people that are playing stuff all the time, so it's like, if you want to be a part of that, you can, but if not, then you know, usually it's just around the race.
Yeah, interesting. Like learning on the job. You said, like, you got to sit down in the real deal to really feel it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, awesome. I think I got around a lot of the topics, and I don't want to take more of your time. I can also see some people in chat are calling me out for taking your time, so sorry about that.
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, if people came into if people came into the chat late, yeah, this he just wanted to ask me some questions. He had actually asked me, I think in April of this year, like literally months ago, and then I'm really bad at Discord and all forms of communication, so he came into my Twitch channel today and was like, hey, just reaching out, and then I was like, all right, let's just do it live. So yeah, this was really fun. I don't mind doing stuff like this whenever I have time, so no problem.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Like, I'm hoping to draw up some comments from you and different people from different industries and try and bring it to a conference at some point. And I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff to learn from these, I guess, less traditional fields of work from all of us nerds who think we've got it figured out. So
oh, absolutely. I mean, this is something I'm fascinated in. If you are fascinated in, if you ever actually bring this to a conference and you get perspective from leadership positions in different areas and how to, you know, just anything like that, if you had some kind of greater insight on leadership or how things, I mean, that would be one of the first things I'd be interested in reading. So
that's what makes Max so good right there. He's leading the guild's top guild, the world's top guild, and he's still interested in how he can be a better leader. He doesn't have the ego of like, we're the best, we're the top guild, like everyone needs to learn from us. He has the humility to say, I'm interested in how we could get even better, right? That's dope. That's really cool.
Make sure to let me know if you end up doing that.
Awesome. I definitely will. Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
you, man. And good luck with the stream, and see you around, chat.
Yep. See you, Mikkel.
GG's. Great interview. 40 minutes. We were going to watch it yesterday, and I was like, that's a long video, chat. Worth the 40 minutes. Actually, we probably spent over an hour since I was yapping for half the video, too. Worth the hour. Well done. The interviewer did a great job as well. Really, really great questions. Perfect.